I can, loud and clear. Can you hear me?
We're having technical issues. I cannot hear you.
I think we are live.
Raymond?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear, Dan. How me?
If you can hear me, hang on. We are having some technical issues. We'll be right on.
No problem. I'm too young to be in a hurry.
I cannot hear you, Raymond.
Uh-oh.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello. Okay, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, we're ready to get started. Sorry about that.
Oh, good. Let me make sure all my devices get turned off. Oh,
Let's turn on Raymond's camera.
Oh, I got it. Sorry about that.
All right. So we are still live. Thank you, whoever is still on. Thank you for your patience. This is Why Not Wednesday. You know, I've been looking forward to this for so long, Raymond. I can't believe we had technical difficulties. Literally had to restart my computer. But, you know, technology is like that, isn't it?
It is. It is. Every now and again, you have to go to extreme measures to get to that solution that we're looking for.
Well, Raymond, you know, we've known each other a few months, and you've been one of the people that I've just been so glad to meet and learn about. We had a chance to do a workshop together in Oklahoma. We got to see each other live soon after all the restrictions were over. So I can't wait to introduce you to the Why Society and to everyone that follows us here on Why Not Wednesday. So Raymond Kemp, you're the CEO of Kemp Solutions, but you're also a 33-year Navy veteran who has an amazing story. And I'd love to start with, you know, where you started and where you finished. I teased some of the folks on LinkedIn today, and I talked about what does it take to go from being the lowest ranked guy on a ship to being the highest ranked guy in the Navy over the course of 33 years and meeting every president from President Reagan to President Obama, every president that was in service while you were in the service.
Right.
So tell us about that journey, because that is an amazing story.
Well, let me tell you, first of all, the super short answer, it takes persistence over resistance. So I joined in 1986, and that era was a very tough era for those who remember back, and perhaps for those who just had to read it in books. It was tough as it read. In fact, I would say it's probably even tougher, specifically because the leadership at that time, 1986, if they had 10 years in the Navy, that means they joined right at the end of, the Vietnam era. If they had 15, 20 years in, that means they served while while Martin Luther King was still living, and that struggle of civil rights. And depending on where they stood on the civil rights, in the civil rights posture, they turned into leaders. So my first Master Chief that I ever met, so the first E9, as I got assigned to Philadelphia and to my first ship, which was the USS Independence, an aircraft carrier, I walked in to meet the Master Chief, and it was tough because the data processing technicians before me who went in all got assigned to ADP, which is where the computer dudes worked. And it was all male ship. And when I walked in, I noticed immediately there was the burnt orange and cream, flag of the Texas Longhorns, and over his left shoulder, my right side, was the Confederate flag. And because I was born in the great nation of Texas in the 60s, raised in Oklahoma in the 70s, I had a certain lifestyle that held me accountable to certain standards. And so when he said to me, I don't allow any black guys in the computer room, and that was not the language of the day, you're going to go to this other division, and instead of working on computers where you graduated at the top of your class and had the option to choose orders because of that performance, you are going to go over here and you'll be painting walls and chipping paint and laying tile and doing all this manual labor. And it was challenging. But then when I got into that division, I saw my goal in the Navy when it comes to rank, another black person who had, because that's where all of the black people went. All the black people that he assigned went there. And when I saw that, I was like, well, shucks, if you can do it, I know that I can do it. And relationships are important. And so I asked them, and they kind of pointed me in the right direction. In fact, they used to say that I could be, quote unquote, the one. And turns out that I was. So several ships later, advancement to Master Chief, Command Master Chief, selection as the first Black Fleet Master Chief of Europe and Africa, and things worked out in my favor. Now, what I will say is that for those sailors that are listening, is that the Master Chief of the Navy unexpectedly retired. And at that point, I was the senior Fleet Master Chief, therefore the senior enlisted person in the Navy.
And that is a 33-year journey, Raymond.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, that's a lifetime for a lot of people. You went in as a very young man, and you're still a young man, but now you're doing something different. You're the CEO of Kemp Solutions. I've heard you speak. You're a phenomenal speaker, and you're a leadership expert. What's the biggest leadership lesson you learned in that time in the Navy?
I'd say during my service time, what was validated, because I was, raised by a single mom for a good portion of my life, and my grandmother, both of them were just fierce angels, as well as the rest of my aunts. What they told me as a young child is that three things: one, keep a good attitude; two, believe that you can do whatever you're assigned to do or whatever you desire; and three, do all things with character. Through my career, it was attitude that allowed me to overcome various different challenges. And what I didn't know, because as a young man, I just want to survive. I just want to live. I'm not thinking about being blazing a path for anybody else. I'm just trying to live, make the next rank or get to the rank that I wanted to retire and so forth. And what ended up happening is that people were inspired by that good attitude. And thankfully, because of that, there were other people who were advanced and promoted throughout their careers as well. So long answer, but the main thing that I learned about being a strong leader is having a solid attitude, because like the old saying goes, your attitude will determine your altitude.
So I'm off camera because I'm having video issues, but you look great, Raymond. So I'm going to keep you on camera and ask you some questions from off camera.
Okay.
So Raymond, you recently joined the Why Institute, and we went through your WHY.os, and that was so fun to do that with you. We know that your why is to find a better way.
Right.
Your how is to challenge the status quo, and your what is contribute. You had such an aha moment when you found that out. Tell us what that has meant to you since you discovered your WHY.os.
It has been an incredible relief. It has been a validation of some of the thought principles, that I had while I was serving on active duty, and even when I first retired and began to interact with other professionals. And by that I mean, in the Navy and with other services, as we interacted, oftentimes when I entered into a space, there's an impact, on the thermostat, because at that time I was carrying about probably 260 pounds, and 260 pounds with a 34-inch waist and clearly 10 or 15 years in the weight room can be intimidating. If I'm 6'1.5" or so, and that can be intimidating to people. And so, because better way is my why, but challenge is the how I get there, then when I lean towards someone and I say, well, why are you doing it that way? And how about doing it this way? And have you considered these things? Because I challenge the status quo, I challenge traditional thinking, then people would be very disarmed just because of my presence. So what I intentionally did was have relevant relationships around the Navy. And whenever I would go someplace, I would tell people I was coming, not so they could treat me a certain way, but just so they know where I was going. And if I encounter someone who might have been intimidated and they say, oh my God, I met this guy, he's this way, the people who I knew already would say, whoa, no, that's Kemp. He's looking out for your favor. That guy is legit. No matter what he says, do what he says, believe he's there to help. And now that I know, and I'm not 260 anymore, but I'm about that, I can still walk into a space and say, look, I can break down, look, I'm very naturally seeking a better way. And the way I do that, status quo, traditional thinking. So don't feel intimidated by my presence, because I'm just here to have a positive impact, to contribute to the greater good of the organization and the people. And it just makes things so much better. So I'm excited and share it each time I have, every time I have the opportunity to talk to a group of leaders.
That's outstanding. Yeah. So Raymond, the other thing I always like to ask is, tell us about your biggest why not moment that you had in your career. Name a time. Talk to us about a time that you said, why not? Because we have people on and we ask, why? Tell me a time you just said, why not? I'm just going to go for it. And how did that work out?
So it was actually a moment that just flowed into the rest of my career, because I had a leader on board a ship that I was stationed on, USS Abraham Lincoln, who told me, it was Fred Hyde, who told me, he said, "Hey, we've done all we can do for you. You've got to figure out how to get past this rating exam, which is the way the Navy promotes, and go from there." Now, my paradigm was that because of the school system that I grew out of, I wasn't intellectually prepared to take the exam, so on and so forth.
Right.
And once he said, "It's on you," and I was like, okay, let's just try. Let's just lean in and give it all I've got. And so I figured out new studying techniques, and I talked to other people and sought out help, which was difficult. And once that happened, dang, it just changed my whole way of learning. It changed my approach toward the rating exam, and clearly the rest is history, because I made my way expeditiously through the ranks, and what was once my ceiling had become my floor. And I was standing on it. And I wasn't just standing on it, I was walking it out. And so it was enough with the excuses. Why not? Let's lean in and get after it. And then what happened after that is, every time I was called upon, I always had a question, and I was always prepared to speak. So in an instance, whether it is meeting a president, whether it is listening to the Secretary of the Navy give a speech and then say, "Does anyone have any questions?" in a room full of 3-star, 4-star admirals and civilian equivalents, and no one has a question, I'm like, "Oh, I do. Why not me?" And so that has been, that was probably my biggest why not moment. One more, just super quick story. I was in a place with, I was in a combat environment, and something just tragic occurred, and I knew it was going to be on the news and so forth. And my friends were concerned, family was concerned. But then I get back home, and one of my other buddies, Darren Mars, he said to me, "Man, why are you?" I was 21 years in the Navy. He's like, "Why are you still in the Navy? What are you doing? You need to get out here and do this thing we're doing in real estate, so on and so forth." And I was like, "If not me, who's going to do it? Who better than me to stay and lead and teach these folks how to show what right looks like through leadership and through proficiency within their particular skill set?" And that's all of that came from that why not moment of, perhaps I can do it. And I just put all my energy towards being the best person that I could be, and then leader.
And you took something that could have been negative, right? And in that first assignment you got on that first ship, and you said, "I'm going to lead, and I'm going to become a leader." And you became a leader, and you rose through the ranks that way. Tell us about that initial experience.
Well, I'll tell you, that first day, and being sent out of there, because I thought to myself, "Man, it's 1986. Surely you can't be." It seemed like that language would be over with by now. And he said, "You're going to go to this place," and I said, "Well, where is that?" And he's like, "You go ask that boy." And he had that Southern accent. It sounded like they had four B's in the front of it. But you ask that boy sitting out there at that desk, and he'll tell you where to go. And that was troubling. However, what I knew, and I had been taught, through my family line, that you can, if you believe, you can achieve. And so I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to go someplace and be the best, because the Navy has its points where it's a meritocracy. And so if it's a meritocracy, then I win, because I'm going to go all in with all that I have to be successful. But what he thought, you're right, what he thought was going to work out for my bad actually worked out for my good in a tremendous way. Because the first time I heard someone say, "That guy is a data processing technician, he could be the one," I believed it at that point. And so then it was just a matter of effort over resistance.
I love that. And then you rose to the highest rank for an enlisted person in the Navy, And you have a cool story. You've met every president, from
Right.
President Reagan to President Obama.
Correct.
What was that like for you, a young man coming out of Oklahoma, not a great school system, not a great neighborhood,
Right.
to get to meet all these presidents? That must have been just really exciting. And how did you handle that?
Well, even though, tough situation that I grew out of, I always felt like I had a right to be wherever I was. And I never felt as if it was an accident that I was in a place or meeting a person. And again, that came from the example of the household that I grew up in with my mom, and then this incredible support system that she had with my grandmother and her sisters, my aunts. And thankfully, when I was a child, one of my aunts had she worked at a banquet facility, and I was a banquet waiter, and I was around these grown folks as a young kid, 14, 15 years old, and I just learned how to keep my mouth shut because in those days it was important to be seen, not heard, and don't speak unless you're spoken to. And then so once I got into the Navy and wearing the rank, and the first time I was in the space where President Reagan came in, and he's walking by and shaking hands and so forth, it was it was an interesting situation to see how other people who thought he was the greatest president and person in the world were reacting. And each president has their own fan club, very honestly. I just wasn't intimidated by it. And then, the same thing, later on in my career, whether it be Bill Clinton, President Obama, W. Bush, the second, Bush 2, was legit. I mean, he was, he had a lot of, bad press, but my interaction with him in a very, very private moment on the day that he got his final award at Fort Myers was a interesting, man-to-man exchange, and very, very pleasant. And at that point, again, I wasn't intimidated or nervous about it because I wasn't bred that way.
Mm-hmm. So you went, I've heard this story, but I'd love for you to share it. You had your nieces ask you about meeting President Obama.
Yeah.
I want you to share that story with our audience, because you had an opportunity to meet him, and your nieces were big fans. Tell us about that.
Right. So my so I make my way to Washington D.C. 2008. The election process is taking place. They're looking for people to be a part of that program. And I had just been stationed there, so I'm visiting my cousin, and since I didn't have any, no, so his daughters are my nieces,
Right.
and so they're like, Uncle Raymond, are you going to get a chance to meet the president? Are you going to get a chance to meet President Obama? And I was like, are you kidding me? Is he going to get a chance to meet me? I mean, I've been in the Navy 24 years or whatever at the time. He had a speech. He got elected to Congress. You mean he's new? I've been doing this. Is he going to get a chance to meet me? And they go run and tell, my cousin, Daddy, Uncle Raymond said, will he have a chance to meet him? And he, of course, being my older cousin, is giving me gas, like, oh, here you go. And sure enough, I got selected by Admiral Roughhead to be the Navy representative on the Armed Forces Inauguration Committee. And next thing you know, we're at that first the first concert out on the mall, when he got elected, and, there's Jamie Foxx and all those, Aretha Franklin, all those people there. We're there. Then there's the kids' inaugural ball. We're there. And sure enough, I mean, I met him several occasions. And so whenever I see my cousin, I'm like, oh yeah, remember that time?
I love that. I love that story. So Raymond, you left the Navy, you had a distinguished career. Now you are the CEO of Kemp Solutions. What's your focus? I mean, you're obviously a better way guy. So what people can expect from you is a better way to do things. How you're going to get to it is by challenging the status quo and doing things differently. But ultimately, what people can count on from you is that you're going to contribute to their success.
Right.
How are you living that as the CEO of Kemp Solutions and as a keynote speaker? What's your focus right now?
My primary focus, as I talk to companies, or even in this season right now, is I'll be speaking next week to the recently advanced chief petty officers here in the Dallas area. My focus is building resilient teams and creating an environment where there is a measure of loyalty that is grown within the organization. And so helping those leaders, master the pathway to leadership is my primary focus. And teaching team building techniques and, approachability, their skill set when it comes down to having frank conversations about touchy topics. And we've got plenty. So from the social discord that we've had through, the splitting of a good portion of America with regard to the political posture that we're in right now, as well as, by the way, the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still, raging in various different places. And so the vaxxers, anti-vaxxers, so helping people make their way through conflict and resolving that conflict is my primary focus.
So given that, how are you using your newfound knowledge about WHY.os with the people you work with? How has that made a difference?
Well, so while in the my former career in the Navy, it was important to let me show you. I can show you better than I can tell you, and now I can tell you as well as I can show you. And so that allows me to cut down on the lag time where people believe that I'm truly there to be supportive. I tell you what, Dan, if I had this language when I was the IG for the Navy, oh gracious, that would have made things so much easier. But as I go into organizations now, then the ability to articulate that to them is extremely, extremely helpful.
We had an opportunity yesterday on a different show that we do to talk to a couple, and they talked about the difference it's made for them to understand each other's why, how, and what. And I remember you and I had a conversation, and I said, Raymond, think about the interactions that you have and think about whether knowing a person's WHY.os would be helpful to you in that situation. Have you experienced that anymore since we last spoke?
I have. There's a company that I was working with in North Carolina, and I had the president do the WHY.os before we had do the Y discovery before we had the WHY.os discovery, which is super cool.
Right.
And knowing his why and being able, he's a contribute guy. There's another company that I work with out in Los Angeles. That CEO, Darren Mars, is a contribute guy. Makes it just so much easier because one, I'm a contribute person. It's not my why, but it is my what. And so I can speak the language. And as you and I discussed, when you have one of the whys in common, you instantly click in that particular area. And that has been so accurate. So yes, I have. And I'm so thankful for just having the knowledge, because as I said a moment ago, it just cuts down on the conversation. We get right to the I believe.
You know what I'd love to hear, because we've talked a little bit about that, but you recently had a really cool appointment by President Biden to the National Monuments Commission.
Yeah, American Battle Monuments Commission. Yes.
Yeah, tell us about that. What that has been like. I know you've visited Washington, and tell me what that's been all about.
It has been very, very interesting. So the American Battle Monuments Commission is made up of 11 commissioners, of which I'm one. We are all appointed by the President of the United States, and we're responsible for 58 monuments and cemeteries around the world in 17 different countries, including the United States. And so recently I had the opportunity to go out and get sworn in and take our official photos and get the government access to the things that I need access to. Very, very pleasurable. And by the way, I'm within the commission. We have committees, and I am on the new monuments committee. And so super short but interesting story to me is I served on board USS Mason. USS Mason is a guided missile destroyer, which are normally named for sailors, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen. This particular ship is named after a crew, which just happens to be the Navy's first all-black crew. During World War II, just to kind of make it a shorter story, during World War II, they pulled into Ireland. They created a incredible relationship with the folks there. So much so that in 2016, while I was in Europe, the USS Mason pulled back in, and there were parliamentarians there. There are all sorts of historians from Ireland who came to rendezvous and meet with the ship, thanks to Mary Pat Kelly. And I know that they have been looking forward to and hoping to do something there. And now things have worked out to where I'm on the American Battle Monuments Commission. I can facilitate that conversation between the United States and Ireland. That's exciting.
That is really cool. You've also worked in countries all over the world with different governments, different diplomats. What's been your most interesting experience outside of the U.S.?
I would say, wow, the most interesting. I would say that I had a short conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. So he was, and I got it, he's a controversial figure to some people, but he was a world leader and had been for a long time. So he had finished doing a speech and talking to the press, and he walked away from the microphone. He locked eyes on me, and he walked up and he said, "So what do you do?" And I had the opportunity to share with him how I, transversed the chain of command from the most senior person at the time was Michelle Howard to the most junior person in the Navy, and I can provide operational feedback as well as quality of life things to her. And I said, you should have someone like that. You should have someone who's just going to tell you the truth and not just tell you what you think or what they think you want to hear, what they think you want to hear. And the expression on his face was pretty interesting, as all the strap hangers were trying to run over and find out what we're talking about, and cameras flashing.
Right.
But that was probably the most interesting moment. Now, there's plenty of stories about other countries, but with regard to a world level leader, that was an interesting time where it was important to challenge the status quo, because normally people were just saying to him whatever it was he was accustomed to hearing.
I love that you did that. Raymond, you also had a part in something, creating a leadership curriculum in the Navy. I'm going to probably get this wrong, but was it Lay the Keel?
Laying the Keel, that's right.
Laying the Keel. Tell us about that, because I've heard about that from other folks in the Navy, but you had an integral part in that. So tell us about that.
Correct. So Laying the Keel is the seminal document for the shift in the Navy's focus on educating sailors with regard to leadership. So in days gone by, when we were building wooden ships, that one straight, hard beam that was laid at the keel of the ship, everything else fed off of that. And so in the creating of Laying the Keel, what we did was we talked about the leadership strategy, for those young sailors. We talked about and that's officers and enlisted. We created an environment where there is a follow-up to those initial leadership talks and trainings that they get. And then we brought back initiation for the senior NCOs. And so for those who make their way from E6 to E7, which in the Navy is from first class petty officer to chief, the initiation process we brought back, and then we detailed it in such a way where there was enough formality that the whole entire Navy would that made it to that rank would be able to speak the same language, learn the same fundamentals, and still allow each organization to have the flexibility to teach the specific things that were, especially with regard to heritage, that were important to those commands. And so that was a heck of a way to go out. So that happened probably, it was finalized maybe about just about a year before I retired, and to see it come to fruition with the support of the Master Chief of the Navy, Russ Smith, as well as the Chief of Naval Operations, was pretty darn exciting. And I don't want to just leave it there. It was satisfying and fulfilling, and that, I believe, is what each and every one of us should find within our profession.
No, I love that. I've loved this whole conversation. I couldn't wait to have you on. I'm sorry that we had technical difficulties in the beginning, but like a true gentleman, you stayed on and we got this interview going. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, Raymond, and want to hire you and want to have you speak to their group, or they want to learn more about leadership from somebody who's practiced it for 33 years at a very high level and who's now consulting with companies and helping leaders in the corporate sector, how can people get a hold of Raymond?
There are several ways on all social media. I'm Raymond D Kemp. And if they want to go to my website, you're welcome to go to www.kemp-solutions.com. And certainly on LinkedIn, the same, Raymond D Kemp. I am searchable and findable there.
Awesome. Well, Raymond, it's been a pleasure to have you. I was looking forward to it for a while. This is a great time. I want to say thank you for your service. You know, we're heading into Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for all the folks I get a chance to connect with through my work at WHY Institute, but I'm especially thankful to have met you, and I'm thankful to have such a high level leader be a part of our team. And again, thank you for your service. I look forward to interacting with you some more, and I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving with you and your family.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for your service. And to all of those folks who have the opportunity to tune in, I just want to encourage you with 10 two-letter words. 10 two-letter words that will make you a better person, that will make you a better leader for sure. Those words are, if it is to be, it is up to me, and we can win.
I love that. Thank you so much, Raymond. Happy Thanksgiving, and I know we'll be talking soon.
Absolutely. Take care, Dan.